in some ways, but one way that was similar was he was this idea guy who, you know, was walking into this marketplace. He would easily get funded. He had great ideas. The question was more about, you know, how would he interpret that confident advice from the investors, from his peers, and so forth. And I became really excited about the idea of from afar, from New York, giving this guy all I was going to do was consult. That was the limit. I was just going to take the call and tell him, okay, you want to raise some angel funds. Okay, the guy wants how much of your business for that? For $50,000? I don't think that's a good idea. Let me explain why. You know, that kind of thing. And I don't know what happened. It's like, I feel like, you know, next thing you know, I woke up in the back of the alley with this bump on my head, you know, 5 years later. But I loved every minute of it. And my wife said she saw it in my eyes. She said one day I came home, I was in New York, I was commuting into Manhattan a lot, and I remember I had this long conversation with Kevin on the phone from the Metro North. And she said, you look wild, like your eyes were like, you were like caught. Oh well. I don't regret it. I don't regret it, but you know, I think that I'm aware of that now. And so I might handle things differently going forward.
Now, when we were talking before the panel, we were talking a little bit about personal inclination to be able to give great advice and perhaps not be able to take that advice yourself.
Yeah.
So you are an emotionally driven person.
I think so.
Which is sometimes kind of challenging in the world of entrepreneurship. So how has that evolved for you over the last several years, especially in the last couple?
Well, I think that I've accepted the reality that the reason, what I love about entrepreneurs and what I love about technology businesses is the emotional context. It's that I believe, you know, for me, Digg and everything about Digg and Revision 3 were and continue to be about changing something that's bigger than me. And it becomes very emotional and you get very much involved. But I know that the advice I would be giving myself would be to create some degree of distance, understand that these are venture-backed businesses, you know, these guys want 100x return. So what's best for the world, or best for my conscience, or best for maybe the community might not be best for the ROI. And so, you know, how do you know, I couldn't reconcile, I think, those differences. And I think that going forward, I would be better to mentor others than necessarily to be that guy myself. I'm struggling with this right now because I have a number of projects, and it's so tempting to be the CEO and just run with it. But I'm trying not to. I'm trying to find the leaders to do this themselves so I can be that guy on the sideline, because I know it's my weakness.
Do you really think that you can sit on the sidelines, though?
Well, I don't know. You got to ask me that again in 6 months. I've been able to do it for the last 6, which has been very difficult. Increasingly easier, but it's been very hard. Like I said, my first 4 months out of Digg, I'd wake up. It's like checking the mail. Like it got to the point where you kind of open your eyes. You're like sleeping. You open your eyes, and you don't even, as you're opening, you grab your smartphone. Let's see. How many? Raise your hand if you've done that. Come on. Just about everybody.
The people not raising their hands are so liars.
You know, and that's probably not okay. I just want everyone to understand. Look into my eyes. It's probably not okay. And it's not a bad thing to be passionately involved with leading your investors. We love you to be that involved. But it took a while. And part of it is,
But don't you think, though, that a little bit of distance, though, makes you a better entrepreneur? I mean, it doesn't, they're not mutually exclusive. Giving yourself a little breathing room and space doesn't have to mean that you're not hungry.
I agree. And I think that's particularly important looking forward, right? What's really important when you step away, a lot of folks look backward, right? And they become armchair quarterbacks. kind of that distance. It's a clarity of thought that is, sometimes it's harsh, but I think it's very good. I know certain investors that are extraordinarily good mentors because they've been sort of no BS type of advisors, and then there's the other kind. You know, but you got to have that kind of clarity.
Can you describe that?
The other kind? Well, it's not, I mean...
Just a couple of words that you use to describe them.
The context of this is, you know, how do you identify it? That's the problem, is you can't identify it. I've been very fortunate, though, in that I've had some incredible people working with me on the money side over the years. But yeah, I mean, look, there's alignment. When you take money for your idea, on the first day, everybody believes it's going to be as big as Facebook. Come on. Everyone hopes that. That's in your heart. You want it to be the next giant thing in technology. So on that day, we're all aligned. The question is, who becomes a realist first? And what do you do about it? And I do believe that after a few times that you've tried and failed, and for every Digg and Revision 3, I got a few others you guys haven't heard about. You know, after you've done it a few times, you start to realize that there's a sort of moment in time that is delusional. And you become better at interpreting when that person you're talking to is a little delusional. Right? And that's a skill. I don't know how to describe that or how to give you that radar. But I do think you can use some basic math. I mean, if you look at the venture-backed businesses, the chances of you being 100x return are virtually zero, right?
On a good day with a tailwind.
With the, you know, it does, I mean, it's just the odds are not for you. It doesn't mean don't try, because a return on your investment, which would be awesome, isn't 100x. I mean, 5x is pretty damn good. 10, 20, 30. There's a big range there. So just identifying the reality of what a good outcome is. Also making sure that your goals are very clearly stated on day one. Everyone's emotional on day one. Things are great. They're exploding. And it's going to change the world. But let's go back to what the business goals are. Restate them so everyone's in sync on what those are.
Let's talk about Digg. So, you and I actually were at a dinner, like maybe the day or two before the news hit that you were leaving. You were definitely preoccupied at dinner.
I didn't know how it would be taken. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the departure. It was pretty fast by external view, but perhaps not so fast from your perspective.
Yeah, I think that before I moved to California, my wife and I talked about it about 10 months before that, about the likelihood of me staying at Digg throughout all 2010 was very low. Both for personal reasons, professional reasons, there's a whole list. And yet we decided to move to California anyway. I think partly because I knew that this is where all those businesses I was advising resided, and the future ones that I'd be creating were based. And it was just a more logical place for us to be. And so I remember that conversation very well, a number of conversations with my wife where it was like, okay, we know this is gonna happen probably within the next year. So I guess I've known for a long time, and part of it comes back to that whole moment in time while working at Equinix, I moved to the East Coast, which is I know that there is this awareness that I need to have that distance, and moving to California was the opposite of that, right?
What did your wife say in this whole conversation? What was that conversation like?
Well, I think she's the one who, Brenda, had really the toughest time with all of this, because she's seen the roller coaster and experienced it. I mean, 5 startups later, she's seen this kind of thing that we all go through as entrepreneurs, and has to deal with it as a mother and as a wife. And so the idea that I was self-aware, she thinks she was telling me was really positive. The idea that moving to California would be a better place for me, she was very supportive. I sort of gave her this virtual eject button. And I said, look, we'll get a new CEO. You just press this button at any point. She never pressed that button. For 5 years at Digg. I think it's because she was excited about what Digg could become as well, and really believed in the democratization of all this and sort of the excitement. She also likes to see me get passionate about things like that, and the kids were proud and everybody was happy. And so, you know, I think that she was supportive, but she also knew moving out here might be the key to eventually me establishing this sort of professional distance from the companies that I'm advising. And it was just the first step, necessary step. Well, we've had some interesting conversations since I left Digg, where the question is, well, what would be the right sort of formal next step? Because I have so many options. But that's a conversation that continues.
Now, in terms of, let's talk about the history of Digg leading up to this this departure. So, you're the CEO of the company.
I think. yeah, I'm CEO.
By some accounts, though, in terms of the
reluctant CEO, I would say.
The reluctant CEO, not necessarily always the face of the company. Kevin, very much the
I
face.
tried very hard to not be the face of the company. Yeah.
As well as on the voting side in terms of decisions made internally at the company, as some stories go.
Yeah, I had authority, but that was my deal with Kevin, and I think it was the right decision. Again, back to my experience as a product guy at Equinix, I really wanted to give Kevin a voice and a platform to experiment and to try, fail, succeed, whatever. And that was just an agreement. It was just a handshake. It didn't have to go that way. And there was definitely, the classic, I was talking to him the other day. We were sitting a few days ago having this conversation about how we would fight in private, like you know, when there was something we disagreed on, which wasn't too often. We would go into, barely, and fight is a stretch. We would have these, it was more like a sibling kind of like, you do this, you know, that kind of thing. And we'd sit in a room and we'd talk about a feature or some direction. And ultimately, yeah, I mean, what if you know, if you wanted to decide to go a particular way, even if I disagreed, we would go that way.